नहीं मैं बोलता हूँ सर, आपका यूट्यूब लॉ एंड्रॉइड के आ गया लगता है। Raisa, can you make me the host, please?
Yes. Dr. Abhijit, you'll have to make the other panelist as co-host, I guess.
Raisa,
Yes.
can you make Mishra sir? Can you do a video call to Mishra sir?
Video call on WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
Okay.
हाँ सर, हाँ सर.
Yeah.
Let me add.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you see my?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Professor. We can hear you. Yeah.
Good.
We're just sorting out the YouTube link. Yeah.
Yep, no problems. I'm getting a lot of feedback on the sound.
Good afternoon, Professor K. Good afternoon, Professor K.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good. We're good.
G'day, Kate.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
boss.
Dr. Mishra is just busy. We are just making the YouTube link live, so just setting it up.
Sounds very technical.
Yeah. Minutes. Yeah.
Basant, how are you? You there? Basant, can't hear you. Can't hear you, Basant.
You're on mute.
Yeah, he's
You're on mute.
Yeah, Dr. Mishra is currently interacting with our technical person just to getting the things live from his
I
YouTube
see.
account.
Okay, I'll come back in
That's
a couple
why.
of minutes.
That's why, yeah.
What's happening there, Kate?
Well, I'm in Sydney, so I just flew up here this afternoon. So I'm spending the weekend with Mum and Dad.
How are they?
Yeah, they're good. They're really good. So we just had some pizza, nice bottle of wine.
Which pizza?
Place in North Turramurra. I don't think you'd know.
No, but what was it?
Hawaii, half Hawaiian, half prosciutto.
Did you know that marinara doesn't actually have seafood on it?
Yes, I did know that.
Did you? How did you know that?
It's usually just a tomato sauce.
Hello.
I'm impressed.
Well, you know.
Basant, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hey,
I can.
Basant, how are you?
Okay. Hey, Kate. Yeah, we're just trying to make it live stream on the YouTube. So there is a technical team which I was talking on in a video call. They're trying to. It is scheduled at Indian time 4:30 p.m. So there is some live button because my secretary is on leave who usually does this, so I have to do it. So I can't find the live button. So she was trying to help me with that. But anyway, we're on. I don't see we have Andrei today with the Nazar interacting with him. I don't see them. I hope they will join in time. But we are on time. We will start off even if they join late. That should be fine. So, Kate, you got your things worked out. What are you going to today? You have a chance.
Yes.
Today you have a chance. You've got the opportunity now.
I've got all of my questions ready. I've done a wide panel of words to describe the professor.
Yeah.
As part of my questions, it'll be excellent. We've discussed what we're going to talk about, so we're all ready to go.
All right, good.
Well, we didn't. I said I didn't want to know the questions in advance, really.
That's
No,
what
no,
I
we
said.
discussed broad
I
areas.
said, Kate, that you should have some surprise questions for him. Give a viva to him.
Sorry.
Let him be on the other side of the table today.
Discuss
Can
broad
give us
areas, any particular areas he wanted to cover, but the questions are not specific.
Yeah. So I think I had written to you what we do it. I would just at 4:30 Indian time, which is another 8 minutes. I will introduce you all, and then I will invite you, Kate, to take over and interact with Andrew. All right?
And Basant, this is mostly to a Indian audience. Is that correct?
No.
There'll be plenty of Australians there, let me tell
Yeah,
you.
it's all over. There are this is in groups. We have membership of about 25,000 neurosurgeons all over the world.
Really?
It's gone to WhatsApp groups. How many will join? I don't know. See, but we are making it YouTube live, so some of them can see it later also, because it's recorded and it's available on YouTube. It would be.
How do you get it on YouTube?
Well, I have sent you the link. I
for
sent you the
YouTube.
WhatsApp link, which had the YouTube link there.
Oh,
If you see the WhatsApp message,
yeah.
there is a YouTube link there.
Oh, it's quite complex.
Anyway, you see the YouTube link.
Yeah,
Just
I see
open that
YouTube.
WhatsApp message only.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So you just open that link. And so that remains ongoing, does it?
Yeah, but that will start when we start this program. That's not on now. That's what the technician is trying to do it. I see Andrei now coming in. Hey,
Yes.
Andrei.
Andrei,
Yeah.
how are you?
So,
How are you, Andrei?
hey, Andrew, great to see you. I'm Margaret Hussein. Very nice.
Hey, Andrei.
Hi.
So it's still good
What
morning.
what
isn't
time
it?
is it? What time is it in Australia, actually? It's how far in
It's
the
only
evening? are-
10 p.m. 10
10
p.m.
p.m.
No problem.
Okay, okay.
It's not
Well,
10 p.m.
9:53. Yes, it is.
10 p.m.
9:53 p.m.
Oh, is it really that late?
Text me at 3 o'clock in the morning all the time because you think it's some different time.
But you probably have time differences in Australia anyway.
No, that's just because you don't care. I know, but that's okay.
That's right.
But you are in the same time zone, I know. So should be fit. I will be back in a minute. Just getting my phone on.
So, Basant, at some stage we need you there.
Sorry, say that again.
At some stage we need to talk about the meeting this year
Okay.
and what we're going to do about it. We're still planning going ahead full steam, so it's going on. I have my concerns about it, about a face-to-face meeting, just how viable it's going to be.
Well, you know, things are settling down all over the, I mean, except probably Americas, the things are settling down in Europe, it is settled down in India. In Mumbai is much, much better last couple of days only. Of course, there's still in parts of India, which is still numbers are very big, especially South. But I think the prediction is end of February, it should die down. But of course, we need to wait and see. I mean, every time we think that it's gone, it's coming back. So we don't know. What's it like?
But Indians and Israelis are much less risk averse than the rest of the world.
What's it like in Israel now?
Oh, everyone, it's nobody takes much notice of it. The hospitals are coping. There's a lot of cases, but the hospitals are coping. A lot of people on ventilators, but nobody really worries about it. But if you talk to, I've just got off a Zoom to my sister and brother in Australia, and everyone is worried about it, and they have got these special
Australians are terrible. they are in terrible fear. Actually, they're very, very scared. I don't know.
Oh, wait a minute. Victoria's positively liberal compared to Western Australia.
Yeah, the whole of the West is, half the country is totally closed down still.
Yeah.
In New South Wales is a bit better. But generally, they've got a much, you speak to somebody here in Israel or someone in India, I don't think it's necessarily a reflection of what people think around the world, of how their attitudes.
But Israel, you saying that still numbers are high? The numbers are still high?
Well, nobody really takes much notice of numbers. They look at, and nobody really talks much about it. It's not such a big deal. But there's, if you look at the blatant, the numbers, there's still quite a lot, but you know, a lot of people
But
are.
Stan, people are having trouble opening the link. The AANS
Yeah, I got
directorate.
some message. Ask them to go to the, I have sent again the, you know, go to the link, the Zoom link.
It's better. That's the best way to do it.
Kate, I will send you another link. So try sending them that one. Okay.
I'll forward it to everybody again.
I will send you
Nasser
another-
also has arrived. Good to see you, Nasser.
Hi, Nasser.
Yeah.
Hello.
I don't know why, because it works.
Well, Kate, I have sent you another WhatsApp message. Send them to whosoever cannot open it.
Yeah, I have. I've sent it again, but
No, another new one. I have sent the link, separate link one now. Hi, Nasser. Good afternoon.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you for this invitation.
No, it's a pleasure.
It looks
We'll
to be a
enjoy
new
that.
opinion and a great event, actually.
So, but these we are keeping it as recordings, which will be available on the YouTube, as I had already informed you. So
Yes,
you can tell your residents, and we're going to have a library like this. I mean, so this we're going to do it. At least I hope that we'll continue to doing it for at least 12 editions, and we'll see how it goes, and then we'll try to see if we can bring out a kind of audio version, video audio version of CD, something like that.
excellent opinion, actually. And Andrei, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Andrew, I'm happy to be
How are
here.
you? Nice to see you.
Yes, good to see you too. Thank you very much, my friend.
So
How are
we
you?
have 1 minute to go. Abhijit, you will give me a timer.
Okay.
How long do I send each mentor? 30 minutes?
20 minutes, and we'll have the public, the audience, the delegates to ask questions if they want. We'll
Okay.
30 minutes each one altogether.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Abhijit, you will give me a call.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you will see. But Kate and Andrew are starting.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's
National,
right.
we're neighbours here almost.
We'll start in a few seconds.
Okay.
You've had a haircut, Basson.
Sorry.
You have a very smooth haircut there.
Yeah, well, my wife does the haircutting now. I don't go to the hair salon anymore. My wife does it now. So you're live now.
Yeah.
You're live. Hello. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this the mentors session. This is the series which we're doing every month for 1 hour each. And I'm so delighted to have some of my very good friends and very eminent neurosurgeons who are the mentors and who would be interviewed again by very close friends of mine. All very, very famous, established neurosurgeons who have contributed to our specialty enormously. So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Andrew K., who is now in Israel, was previously the chair of the neurosurgery department and Department of Surgery, Royal Melbourne Hospital, Melbourne, Australia. Currently, he is the consultant neurosurgeon at Hadassah Hebrew University Medical Center in Israel. He is the co-chair of the Education Committee, Israel Neurosurgery Society, and the chair scientific committee of AACNS, Jerusalem, Israel, which is going to be held in September 2022. He has been also the past president of AACNS and the chairman scientific program committee of AACNS 2022. He is going to be interviewed by Professor Kate Drummond of Australia. She is currently the director neurosurgery, Royal Melbourne Hospital, the second vice president of the continental second vice president of WFNS, the head of CNS tumors, VCCC Parkville Precinct, and she is also the chair education committee of our Continental Society, Asian Australian Society of Neurological Surgeons. And with the other mentor today, again, a very good friend of mine and a very eminent neurosurgeon who have contributed enormously to our specialty is Professor Andrei Groten Huis from Netherlands. He is currently the emeritus professor and former chairman, Department of Neurosurgery, Radboud University Medical Center, Netherlands. The president, he has been the president of EANS and currently the president of EANS Foundation for Research in Neurological Surgery. He's also the chairman of the audit committee of the World Federation of Neurosurgical Societies and the president of International Society for Neurosurgical Technology and Instrument. He has been the past president of EANS, as I said, and he is going to be interviewed by a very eminent neurosurgeon and good friend of mine, Professor Nasser El Ghandour from Egypt. He is currently the treasurer of the World Federation of Neurosurgical Society, the president of Egyptian Society of Neurological Surgeons, the secretary of CANS, editor-in-chief of Pan-Arab Journal of Neurosurgery, and professor of neurosurgery, the Faculty of Medicine, Cairo University, Cairo, Egypt. So without wasting more time, let me have the pleasure to invite Kate to kindly start interviewing Andrew K. Kate.
Thank you. Thank you, Bashan. Thank you very much. So, boss, it's a pleasure to be able to interview you as obviously my chief mentor in neurosurgery. So my first question is to ask you, who were your greatest mentors and influences in life or in your neurosurgical career?
Well, Kate, thanks very much, and thanks for taking on the task, and thank you, Bashan, for asking me. But of course, Kate, you were a mistake, which you might want to bring up later, or you don't want to bring up later. I think that I was actually very blessed because I had people I had two people, particularly three in retrospect, who were great mentors, people who I had great respect for. The first was John Curtis in Melbourne. And remember I started training before the microscope really came in and before CT scan. And he was a neurosurgeon of the old school where everything was based on clinical neurosurgery. So I really learned clinical neurosurgery well before the luxury of particularly of the CT scan. And then I moved to Oxford, where Chris Adams had started using the microscope, and he was brilliant, and he was a brilliant technical surgeon. And I was blessed to have to work with him, and a great clinical neurosurgeon. And then to the United States, where I worked with John Little in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic. And John was really the surgeon scientist. And he showed me really that you could be a scientist and a surgeon and do real research at the same time as being a clinical neurosurgeon. So those were the three.
So I can't let you say that I was a mistake without, I know what you're about to say something. What were you about to say?
I was going to say, but of course, along the journey, there were many people who significantly influenced, and there are too many. There are too many people to recount. But I learned from so many people throughout my clinical experience. I mean, and not just eminent neurosurgeons, but I always thought you could judge a resident by how good they were, but if they taught you something. And if a resident didn't teach you something, then they really weren't a good resident. And so there are many people, just looking at Bassett now, and Andrei, and Nasser, people like that who've had enormous influence, and on what I do and how I practice neurosurgery. And you're just looking at, say, Bassett, the numerous times I've been to India and learned from the residents there. And so whilst they're the people who are the primary mentors and had influence on you, it's the people throughout my career have had internationally have had huge influence on what I've done, how I've practiced. Sorry, go on, Kate.
Well, you know, I can't let you say I was a mistake without explaining to some of the people who are listening as to why you said that. About 10 years after Andrew employed me, I said, we were fighting, and I said, well, if I'm so hopeless, why did you employ me? And he said, oh, well, I was very impressed with you when I met you that day at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. And I said, well, I never worked at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. And he said, yes, I was accrediting the unit. You showed me around, and I was very impressed. I thought I'd like you to come and work with me. I said, I never worked at Royal Melbourne Hospital, at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. That was Virginia Meixner. And he looked up at me and he said, I've employed the wrong person. And that was 10 years after we started working together. So my employment, and now, you know, I hope as chief mentee, was an absolute mistake. So I did send out an email to all of the people who you've been influencing over the years, and I asked them for words to describe you. So the words that I got were wise, honest, dedicated, uncompromising, charismatic, leader, neurotic, obsessive, inspirational, hilarious, legend, perfectionist, mentor, and relentless. What do you think are the words or the characteristics?
They left out kind and empathetic.
Yeah, it wasn't on the list, and I left off cautiously optimistic and satisfactory or adequate, which is how you always describe your own performance. But what words would you use to describe important characteristics of a great neurosurgeon?
Well, I don't know about a great neurosurgeon. Of any neurosurgeon, I think if you're going to be a neurosurgeon, you've got to incorporate a lot of those characteristics. You've got to be relentless in what you do. You must never give up. You've got to be a perfectionist, even though you'll never reach perfection. You'll never reach nirvana, but you've got to be aiming for it the whole time. You've got to be totally, completely and utterly honest with yourself. You've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to be honest with your wife, and you've got to be honest with your accountant. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Those are the three people, the three things. And unless you are critically honest with what you do in an operation, every patient you see, if it goes well, was it by chance or was it something you did? And if it goes badly, it is always, always, always your fault. You can never blame anyone else, and you've got to be brutally honest, because otherwise you will never advance. So you've got to always be aiming for perfection, but you will never reach it. And to do that, you've got to be completely and utterly honest with yourself and relentless with yourself about what you're doing. Once you stop that, and once you stop learning, then you should stop neurosurgery. Luckily, hopefully I'm still maintaining those values and I can still continue going.
I mean, the two things that I'd say that I'd add to that you personify are attention to detail. Like every detail. I don't know how you, and the energy to have attention to every detail, which I guess is part of relentless. But
that's part of relentless. You've got to,
yeah,
and as soon as you don't, and of course, not always can you have it. And when you miss it, you then end up with a disaster. It's the one time you don't have attention. It's the one time you might see a little bit of faintly blood-stained blood coming out of the last time you're going to put a suture through the dura. You think it's late at night, you've been operating all day, it'll be okay. So one time you don't open the dura, have a look, see if there's bleeding, that you're going to be back at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, reopening everything, and something will go bad. So yeah. You've got to constantly have that relentless attention to detail. But you can't lose the wood for the trees. That's the other thing as well. You can't be so overly obsessive that you become scared by whatever you're doing, and then it scares you. You've got to actually be able to have the balance within that.
I don't think I've ever heard you use those two words together, overly and obsessive.
Yeah, well, you feel as though you are, but on the other hand, you've got to be obsessive. But on the other hand, there is a risk of that. You can become too obsessive, and I see it in some people where they can't proceed, they can't move on. and so because they're too scared to move on.
What's your proudest achievement in neurosurgery? Or life?
Well, I think in neurosurgery, I think when you look back and see people that you've trained. I mean, this is a trite answer, but it is people that you've trained who are doing well and who really are doing well. And you're one of them, of course, Kate. And there's actually, frankly, there's not all that many that do really well, that really personify what you want people to achieve. And also, of course, when you see patients that do well, patients that you've really struggled over, that are doing well. And in neurosurgery, you know, you're obviously going to have your disasters as well as an occasional patient that does well. And then that really is, that does give you some satisfaction.
You might have had more than the occasional.
More than the occasional, obviously.
More than the occasional patient who does well, because I'm still seeing them and doing scans on them now.
Well,
I saw 2 today.
And have their wounds closed yet?
Yes. My secondary intention. They're completely healed now. What about in life?
Oh, well, in other than neurosurgery, of course, your family. And you know, I think my greatest achievement was to choose the right wife, or perhaps and convince her to take the journey with us. And there's no question that I couldn't have done it without her. It's you know, to really practice neurosurgery, you need to have constant support, and to have a family, a wife and a son who to be constantly supporting us has been invaluable. We couldn't do it without it.
So in your next life, depending on your worldview, in your next life, if you couldn't be a neurosurgeon or a Hawthorn footballer or coach, what would you choose to be?
Well, if I couldn't be a neurosurgeon, I don't know if I'd really, having done neurosurgery, I don't think I'd probably do any other medicine, because I wouldn't really be stimulating enough. But probably a jockey. If I had the ability and a jumps jockey, if I could really choose a jumps jockey, I mean, that really is an extreme. If you're good enough and you've got the talent to be not just a jockey but a jumps jockey, then that really is the very best of horse riding skills, I think. So if I could do that, I'd love to do it. I look at those jumps jockeys and I think, you know, how do they have the extraordinary courage and ability that they have, skill that they have is enormous.
That wasn't what I thought you might want to be a boxer.
Well, I did boxing, but I didn't have much talent. I did a lot of things.
Okay.
I've done a lot of things in life, but without much talent in it. I always had a lot of enthusiasm for it, but without any great skill and certainly no talent. And so boxing
as a ballerina.
Yeah. So boxing, I did boxing as a young man, but I was not particularly good. My timing was terrible, and I really wasn't much good.
My next question, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing neurosurgery in the world today?
Oh, well, I think that that's a good question, Kate. And I think that it goes back to the imbalance in facilities and the lack of access for people throughout the world. And particularly, you know, our interest is mostly in the Asian region, which is a huge region, 60% of the world and 60% of the world's population, and it's the inability to provide good neurosurgical services. And so that you've got to start right at the beginning in terms of medical education, surgical education, neurosurgical education, providing the services to the population. So to me, the greatest challenge is to provide good neurosurgical services throughout the world. Now, you've been very much involved in Africa doing fantastic work in Africa, and you know what I mean there. But and the same goes, and you've been in many places in Asia with us where the extraordinarily dedicated neurosurgeons, but the lack of facilities, the lack of numbers, the lack of ability of people, the population to access them. So working in Australia or working in Israel, it's working in a very, very privileged society where they have wonderful access, but and frankly, the community is spoiled and the neurosurgeons are spoiled. You go, I think, to work at the times I've spent, the most wonderful times I've spent, say, in India, where you see the huge thirst for education amongst the residents, the trainees, and they're striving to give the adequate access and good access to good neurosurgical facilities. It's very inspiring. If you go to other countries, say Myanmar or throughout the Philippines, where they have great challenges, all of these, but so to me, the biggest issue is providing, for the neurosurgical community, providing access to really high-level neurosurgery facilities at every level, not just in treating difficult basilar aneurysms, but in treating trauma, in treating the common brain tumors. And I see that as the biggest challenge. That's why I've been particularly interested in the Asian Australasian Society of Neurosurgery, where it really has put an enormous commitment, and through people particularly like Basant and Yong Kwang Kyu and Wan Tu Xiao, put enormous efforts into providing good neurosurgery in the region.
I wonder,
that's a fairly loquacious answer to it.
Well, I wonder though, I think, I think we need, as a society or as a craft group or whatever you call it, as a profession, that, and I'd be interested in what you think of this, but, I think we often get it quite wrong as to what neurosurgeons need to contribute to many low and middle income countries. So, as you say, I go to Africa most years pre-COVID, and, the best thing I've done is provide a neuro-obs chart to the intensive care unit. Nothing fancy neurosurgical, but, triage and basic head injury management for the district hospital is probably, our greatest contribution. And you often hear of people saying, well, can we get you a microscope, or can we get you this? And of course, there's a part for that, but some really, really basic stuff, like how to make the decision of who does and doesn't need an operation is incredibly important.
Absolutely. So it goes from the most basic components of clinical medicine, clinical surgery, neurosurgery, to, at the same time, people working there want to be aspirational. So they want to be able to see what and do what Basant does. But on the other hand, you have to, so it's the balance. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because it's very easy to talk about the very latest techniques in, say, treating the molecular genetics of glioma. But on the other hand, you've got to teach, and they've got to have facilities to do the basic treatments of say, treating a glioma or treating a posterior fossa tumor or an aneurysm. So it is getting the balance in every part of the world. So to me, that's the greatest challenge in neurosurgery. On the one hand, to provide the basic cover, on the other hand, to provide the pathway to improving one bit by bit what are going to be the aspirations of neurosurgeons working there. And of the community.
And then if you just look at, say, Western neurosurgery, Australia, the US, Israel, letting the rest of the world aside, what do you think the challenges are there?
Oh, I think the biggest challenge for neurosurgeons is in training neurosurgeons is to make sure that neurosurgeons who are training understand basic clinical neurosurgery, and not to be overwhelmed by the technology. And at the moment, they love the tech. Everyone loves the technology, but they are forgetting, and they're not being trained in basic neurosurgery. So on the one hand, it's basic clinical challenges in treating basic clinical neurosurgery. The other is for the marshmallow generation that's coming up, or whatever you want to call them, is to understand that the clinical medicine is about the patient. It's not about themselves and their own feelings. I'm not interested in their own feelings at all. We're interested in the patient and how the patient feels on treating the patient. So if a person complaining they're working 70 hours, well, tell someone who cares. It's really about the patient. So emphasizing that we're interested in everything is about the patient, not about themselves.
Yeah, I think...
And that goes across the Western world.
Well, it goes across everything, because I think the more time we spend worrying about how we feel, the less satisfied we are by something, because you only get the satisfaction when you're actually concentrating on what you're doing for someone else.
Yes, yes. And also, you've got to be able to function effectively at 100%, even if you do feel tired and you've got a cold or you've got whatever you've got, now they call it COVID, but whatever you've got to be able to still function positively at 100%. You've got to put yourself in that situation. You can't say, oh, well, I was a bit tired, I was feeling a bit unwell, you know, one of my children weren't well. See, that's beside the point. In the end, you've got to be concentrating on what's going to be happening for the best for the patient and doing 100% there. So that's the big challenge for the Western world in training neurosurgery.
What was your favourite What's your favourite operation? Apart from 2 centimetre convexity meningioma.
No, I think I know that Bassett is very keen on radiation these days, but I still think a big acoustic is probably, or an aneurysm is probably my favorite operation.
Kate, let me come in here. Kate, can I just?
Yes.
What would you do? I mean, it's very nice. They've gone through your journey. What would you do if you have the chance to do it all over again? Anything you would do different, Andrew?
Yes, I think I probably would. I'd spend less time as a head of a department, because I think that was very destructive in terms of treating patients. I think the interaction with administration is often toxic and cancerous. I think that people in most people in, not there is few wonderful exceptions, but most of the people in administration have absolutely no concept of the reality of clinical practice, and particularly something like neurosurgery, where you have to have absolute attention to detail, and you can't allow, to get the best results, you can't allow compromise. So I think working in it, being involved as a head of department was not a particularly good time of my life in terms of really being able to do what I wanted to do with clinical neurosurgery. So the beauty of it was when I moved to Israel, and I could really put this in stark relief. I've been head of a department for many years. I then moved to Israel, where I had very little administration, and I left it to someone who is very good at it, Yigal Shashan. And my clinical practice was able to blossom, and my teaching was able to blossom, because I didn't have all of the concerns of working as a head of department for so long. So I would have put a strict limit on the time I worked as a head of a department.
So in your professional career, what would a moment would be the best moment you would call it, and the worst moment in your professional journey?
Oh, well, the best moment is after every time you've clipped an aneurysm and you have that high that actually it's gone well, or you've removed a big acoustic and the few patients that have gone well. The worst moments are the times I can remember where Kate has perhaps been involved with some of them as well, where I've had unexpected bad results.
Yeah.
And you look back and in absolute, you search your soul. Should you still be doing this? What did you do wrong? What happened? What did you do the patient ended up as a bad result. And I've been very lucky with most of those, because actually I've had people, Kate or people like Kate around me at the time. And I think this is one thing I would say as a message, that in neurosurgery, you cannot work alone. You have to work with other people, because you really rely on them as the support in time when times go bad, and there will be bad times. And you have to have someone you can absolutely, utterly rely on to help you through, to help you clinically manage the patient, manage the situation, as well as help you psychologically in some respects with that.
We've sat around on many occasions talking about what happened and what we could have done differently or what went wrong.
And to have someone, and I think the other thing I would is very important is actually which I've seen far more happening in Israel, where people work together as teams during the operation. And so if you've got a big operation, working as a team, and I did that very much for many years with Rob Briggs in the big acoustics, in the acoustic operations, the scale-based work. And that was very helpful. And then to do that in other operations where you have another person there, that's actually can be very, very useful. And I think one thing which I think a lot, particularly in the West, the neurosurgeon feels they need to work by themselves and do everything by themselves. I don't think that actually is very conducive to the best result. It's done often as an ego thing or as a mechanism of practice. Whereas if you can work together as a group and with one or two other people, it makes it I think you get a very much better result for the patient.
So, Andrew, what would be your message to the current generation of neurosurgeons?
Work hard.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
And remember, it's not about you. It's all about the patient. So do what's best for the patient. And those just aren't words. That's the reality. Because once you start compromising there and thinking it's about you, you've lost the plot.
Well, not only Andrew is a terrific neurosurgeon, but I don't know whether, Kate, whether I missed it. He groomed race horses. Did you say that? Did you mention that or no?
Not racehorses. Eventing horses.
Okay, so
Yeah.
but you had very, very handsome horses I have seen in your farm, and he
But
had.
Dan, I couldn't go through all of the football coach, whiskey maker, horse breeder, goat raiser. I mean, I couldn't go through all of the talents that he had.
I know the time is limited. Yeah.
Plasterer's apprentice. The number of different talents and jobs that he has, they're innumerable.
I wasn't very good as a plasterer's apprentice, let me tell you.
But you got very much better when you started putting the hydroset on. So it was okay.
Right,
you got it worked out by then.
That's right.
So energy, I think Andrew, if one word will describe Andrew, is energy. I mean, unlimited energy. There's no question about it. And a tremendous, tremendous friend. I think a friend in need. I can't think of a better friend than Andrew K. Thank you, Andrew. It's been a journey which I love and I cherish it. And I hope we can do it together for some more years at least, if not many more.
Well, thanks very much, Bassam. But can I just add at the end, I know my time is running out with this, but I think that you mentioned perhaps one of the greatest satisfactions, which I didn't say to Kate when she asked, was actually having this group of people that I have met over the years, and people like yourself, Bassam, Andrei, Nasser, Michael Puzzo, Peter Black, Chris Adams, I mentioned. These around and the list goes on. What a privilege it has been to know them, to work with them, to have them as friends. And that has been a great privilege. I've been blessed by that.
Thank you, Andrew. That's a pleasure and a privilege to listen to you after some time. We are not meeting now because of the pandemic. I hope it goes away and we can be together again. But till then, Thank you very much for contributing. And now we'll move on to the next part of our program and the interviewing Andrei Groten, Huis, the mentor by a very close friend of mine, Nasser. Nasser, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Basant. Actually, I would like to thank you about this kind invitation. I'm glad and honored to be with two of my dear friends, not only friends, but actually they are brothers, Basant Mishra and Andrei Groten, Huis. In order not to lose time, we have much to ask, we have much to say, and we have only 30 minutes. And I welcome, of course, Professor Andrei Groten, and we have 8 slides. In each slide, there is 1 or 2 questions, and we have some photos. Andrei is going to make comments about these photos. And so let me share my screen, and let me start by
So you did some work,
I think.
Yeah. And while you're starting up, I can say it was just fantastic to listen to Kate and Andrew. And Andrew, I can only agree with all your points. You're so true.
Thanks, Andrei.
So that picture would now not be allowed anymore. If my hospital administration would see that, they would be angry, because it is not allowed to have this mask hanging around your neck anymore. You're very so that's an old picture.
And so we move to our next slide, and let us speak about the past. The idea of this event is to show the young generations how to be like Andrei Groten. We are going to go inside the personality of Andrei Groten to speak about the past, and then about the present, and then about the future. Can you speak about your life journey, both social and academic?
Oh wow, that's that's a wide subject, social and academic. Well, I mean, it's I was born in a family with 2 brothers, 2 sisters. So well, at that time, that was not even considered a large family, but nowadays that would be considered a large family. But I was based bilingual. My mother was of German descent. My father was Dutch. And they married just shortly after the Second World War. And I just mentioned that because that combination was certainly not considered to be common. Actually, they both lost their nationality because of that. If somebody from the Netherlands would marry somebody from Germany, you lose your nationality. And the same for my mother from Germany. They both regained nationality, actually Dutch nationality, in 1955. So that's, and for me, that was an advantage. In school, it was an advantage because we had to learn English, French, and German as foreign languages. And of course, Latin and Greek, but they are dead languages. So, but that was still the struggle for me. And I finished my, before I entered medical school 50 years ago. And so that was in 1972 at my hometown of Nijmegen. And that was, I think it was a wonderful time. I mean, this was the time, just in '69, we had the first man on the moon. In the early end of the '60s and '70s, there was the transplantations were there. And quite soon in my medical career, I found out that I wanted to do something surgical. So not other parts of medicine, but kind of surgery. And I had the opportunity to become as a student assistant working in the lab for the head of pediatric surgery. We had to study short bowel syndrome and biliary atresia. So we had to do surgeries on beagles and on pigs and to do that. So I did that for during 5 years of my medical school time. And that was also the reason I wanted to become a pediatric surgeon. But that didn't work out, as you now know. The reason for that was actually that I, which was common at that time, I was drafted into the military. So after ending medical school, I entered the military and spent some times in the UNIFIL in the Lebanon, and then the battalion was placed in northern Germany, and the Germans had a battalion in the Netherlands, and there was a Netherlands battalion in Germany. And that was, so when I left that part, there was 9 months left before I could start my general surgery residency. So what to do with 9 months? You can just start to backpack and travel. But well, I had a choice between doing anesthesia and doing neurosurgery. Both departments were looking for a resident, and that was actually, the neurosurgery was in Germany, was very close by to my hometown in the Netherlands. That was not far from the border. So I thought, okay, that's also surgical. It cannot be bad to start doing that. And as you now know, within just a few months, I knew that I wanted to stay in neurosurgery. And that is how I came into this field, and I never have regretted at all. And I simply didn't choose that during medical school because it was not there. There were no lectures in neurosurgery. It was not something that came up into your mind. And that's still one of the difficulties of getting residence, because it is not in the medical curriculum. But the good part of Germany, it is larger than the Netherlands. And I had the possibility to go to Vienna to Professor Koos, and I also met there Axel Panetsky, who really became one of my mentors. And from there, I went to Stockholm. And because that was new at that time, I wanted to learn the gamma knife. And that was with Laszlo Steiner, who was a very, very great personality. I spent several times at his home with his wife, Melita, and discussions, usually not about medicine, but about other parts in life. So that's, and then finally, I took the step for pediatric neurosurgery and went to Toronto, to the Hospital for Sick Kids. At that time, it was with Harold Hoffman. He was one of the 3 Ages there, the age. I think the other was Bruce Hendrick. So I learned a lot of those. I really consider those people as the one who has influenced me in moving forward to it. And then in 1987, I was actually board certified both in Germany and in the Netherlands, but I had a possibility to get a position in Nijmegen. And to be honest, it's unusual, but I stayed there for the rest of my career. So for 33 years, I stayed in the same department, and that was how it went. But what I loved also about neurosurgery is that it's international. It's a small field. When I was in the Netherlands, there was less than 40 neurosurgeons. Now we have 120. But it's already in my first year of, my second year of residency, I went to the World Congress in Munich. That was a wonderful event to see that, and to see the worldwide brotherhood, more or less, of neurosurgeons. That was really great. And well, you can say academic career. I think you will ask other questions on that, not only the present, because in 33 years, you see and do quite a lot.
Thanks, Andrei. I think I had a discussion with Andrei a few weeks ago that neurosurgery is a destiny. We are living a very stressful life, especially during our training program and when we were junior neurosurgeons. And we feel guilty that we didn't have enough time to spend with our parents or with our family. And sometimes we don't have the possibility even to see our children. Is this right, Andrei?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there is some regret, it is having neglected the family. It was absolutely consuming everything of your life in neurosurgery. I mean, we had a rather easy schedule. You just entered the hospital on Monday morning, and then you were on call, so you leave on Tuesday evening. Then it starts again on Wednesday morning until Thursday evening. And then on Friday morning, it starts all the way until Monday evening. So from Friday morning until Monday evening, you never left the hospital. But even if you would, and then the next week, you had the weekend free. But even then, we always went there because we also did research. And so it was just sucking up all your energy and all your time, and certainly did you regret of not having seen children growing up. That's for sure, and that's something you never can do over again. That's the point, because that only happens once. And that's, if you would say that, that's, it sounds sad, but it is, it was at that time, certainly more or less the norm to do so. So we didn't even think badly about that. I never have felt that I still could do a lot of things. And that was the same with Andrew. When I hear that he was a football coach and with horse racing, well, I did mountaineering. I had my pilot license. I did parachute jumping. So, I mean, you had such an amount of energy in younger years that it's amazing to see that when I now look back, where did we find the time to do this? But it's because a day only has 24 hours. And that's, but I think it is common among neurosurgeons that they don't need 8 hours consecutive sleep. Most of us over the time, and even now after retirement, I still have the same schedule. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. If whatever I want to do, I will wake up, simply. I now can stay, I don't have to get up, but I will wake up. That's because if you have done that 40 years, it's simply, it's the internal clock. And that's not bad. You can do a lot during the time. And that was the same when I fully agree with Andrew. The worst time I had was the 13 years as head of the department. And then actually I stopped actively in 2010. I gave it back because it took me away from my clinical work and my clinical duties. The moment that I became head of the department, I already mentioned to the dean, I don't want to do this more than 10 years. That's the maximum. It became a little bit longer because of some technical difficulties, but I was happy to hand it over to one of my former residents who is still doing that job.
Andrei, this is the second question. I know that you answered some of these points during your discussion. Would you like to add something?
Well, I mean, this is one question, two, but there are 4 questions. Quite a bit of, why did I choose neurosurgery? I think it was the excitement. It was everything that was in it. There was the surgical part, but the brain, the central nervous system was just, it was the excitement of, and people sometimes say, but you see such difficult cases. And yes, I trained when there was only a head CT scan just coming in. The first generation, if you show those pictures to current residents, they don't even recognize anything on it because it was very pixelated. But for us, it was incredible. During the weekend, it didn't function, so we had to do carotid injections. And for the spine, during my whole training, we only had myelographies. So that's and actually, I sometimes miss the dynamics of that of those investigations. Now we have laying all the patients flat on in a supine position. Don't move, please. And then we have the MRI scan. But with myelography, we moved them around and deflection and flexion and turn and rotating, and then we saw more of what was happening. So this was done. If you very often the resident were.
So you did pneumoencephalography, the ventriculography.
Yes, well, sometimes we had to do that, but not very long. It was only rarely because the CT scan was not there. But we didn't do a lot of the with the burr holes. We did a lot of suboccipital punctions and injecting air. And actually, suboccipital punctures, simply there is nobody doing that anymore, is capable or daring to do it. Well, it is actually technically very easy to do. No, but this was the development that we saw. So I had to learn MRI scan when I was already a couple of years working as a staff member. So this is the development, the technical part of neurosurgery was also certainly one of the reasons I choose it. It's a very technical specialty, but next to that, I think it is the bond you have with your patients. It's incredible. I always wondered, and I tell my residents, it's amazing that somebody else, another human being sitting in front of you, agrees and allows you to open their skull and operate on their brain. I mean, that's just incredible. And I said, you have to earn that trust in every single case. And it's not because you have your white coat and you have your name tag with neurosurgeon on it. That's not the reason. You have to earn it every single time. Because for those patients, I can tell you that's this is interesting. I had a total of 22 books that were written by my former patients. And one of actually was, the title of that book was My Death Sentence. And that's for many patients, that feels actually there was a patient with a meningioma, but the neurologist had told him that it was a glioblastoma, but it was a meningioma. So he still lived on and he could write a book called My Death Sentence. And so you can see how this, what happens to our patient is enormous. And that also sounds odd, but that attracted me also to neurosurgery. And I spoke about my mentors already. That these you look to patients, and I also to great neurosurgeons, and I like what Johannes Nemi once said. He said, "You have to sit in the cold corners of other ORs and watch them really taking care of cases," and that's true. But I also agree with Andrew that I learned so much from my residents. They both in let's say socially, but also in and my teacher already told me, and it was amazing. I mean, for me, he was the professor and the nurse. He said, in 10 years, you should be better than I. You should be capable of doing more. And I said, how is that possible? I mean, he's the professor. How should I be better in 10 years? He said, if that's not the case, I have done something wrong. Because then there is no progress. You should and you will be better. And that's, I kept contact with him. He died when he was 93, and he had seen a lot of my career, and he was immensely proud. And that was, and he wrote me letters. And it's the same from my residents. I'm extremely proud seeing how well some of them really have done and what kind of great surgeons they have become.
Well, that's a very important question. Andrei, what is the most satisfying moment, most devastating moment anything you should have done different if you are put in this situation again?
Mm,
And remind you
well,
that we still have 5 slides and have
oh,
about
okay.
12 photos. And
Well,
so
I think that's not very different from what Andrew said. That's, I mean, the satisfying moment is, of course, always when you see how that a patient is doing perfectly well. One of my very last cases was indeed in a 6-year-old who came in with a cerebellar tumor diagnosed too late and already herniating. And well, we did the surgery. A few days later, that girl could go home with her parents. And for me, that was something that I say, now I know why I just had the greatest job in the world. And the reverse is, of course, devastating. Yeah, the unexpected deficit that can occur. You think you did everything right, and the patient wakes up and is either blind or has a hemiplegia, and that's this will happen in neurosurgery to everyone. And I spoke once to a neurosurgeon at the end of his career and said, I'm so happy that I never had a single complication in my life. Then I thought you probably have never done surgery in your life, because that's impossible. That's simply impossible. And it's not, a complication is not always that you have done something wrong. It has gone wrong, but that's not identical to done wrong. And of course, if you, I often, even in surgeries that went well, when I was driving home, I was always trying to look back. Would I do the same steps? Would I start again first on the lateral part of that craniopharyngioma, or would I first go between the optics, or would I? So I was evaluating my own steps. You don't get a second chance. That's the point. You know that, and you have to perform every single time you are called in. And that is also what Andrew said. You cannot say, I'm a little tired, or I'm not feeling so well, so I do it a little bit more sloppy. No, because you know there is only one chance.
Andrei, and during operation, do you have any devastating moments in one of your surgeries? Yeah,
I have certainly experienced that, yes. I remember a bleeding, an acute bleeding from a sinus, from the sigmoid sinus, in a 1-year-old child that we had to do with a huge cerebellar tumor. And while we were dissecting off, we opened the dura, and then by removing, and that was such an horrendous bleeding, and it was only 1-year-old, and then you that little baby ended up in a cardiac arrest. And that's, these are devastating moments. Yes, absolutely. And of course, then you think, how is it possible? Because it was such a big tumor, was compressing that sinus. When we were decompressing it, we must have opened that sinus somehow, but it was still compressed by the big tumor. When we're decompressing, it started to bleed horrendously.
Now I will show you many photos, Andrei, and you can comment on these photos. What is this, Andrei?
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! This is actually my card of the medical school. But I see it is 1979, and it was already at my last year. So because I finished medical school in 1979. Oh my goodness! Yeah, well, you had to have this card because otherwise you would not be allowed to enter the premises. So
you see, Andrew, I got all the information about you, and I got all the photos about you.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's always dangerous. Yeah, these are the two hospitals I can say. That's the left one is the University Hospital, the other is the General Hospital, both in the same city, and we run departments in both hospitals with the same group. And this is with my mentor, Axel Panetsky, and this is, oh, you see, that's still the moustache that I don't have anymore. But this was in 1993, the first International Congress on Minimally Invasive Neurosurgery. At that time, the term minimally invasive neurosurgery was not even common to use. But he was a great person to be there. Unfortunately, he died too early on. Wow. Let me see. I see now what it is. This is in the front is Engelbert Knosp and Alan Cohen. I see Taka Fukushima there. And this was the founding gathering of the journal Minimally Invasive Neurosurgery. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was published by Team a long time, for many years. And that was the founding lunch. You can see there was a lunchtime. That was a good time. You see what I called international. I see colleague from Mexico, and so it's a group. Already we were together in.
Professor Berniski was editor-in-chief.
Yes, together with Alan Cohen, who you see there in up front. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Again, this was, well, we said this was the first World Congress on endoscopic neurosurgery with all the participants. So this was not a big group yet. No, but there's, of course, you see the people on the left side of the photos, these were from the company, but you see Dieter Helwig, Jeffrey Rosenberg, and I see Michael Gaab, Kerry Croney. So these were a small group already. And you see from Japan, from Australia, from Germany, from Mexico. So it was already a small group that was working on endoscopy. That was initially was not considered.
When it was?
This must have been, I think, 1994. I think so. 1993, 1994. Yeah. Oh, that's, you must recognize because this is Professor Gavish. And you see what who you see. I remember this. It was in the Mina House, Oberoi, close to the pyramid.
In Egypt.
Yes.
This is Professor Hassan Gawish. He passed away, by the way, 1 year ago. He passed away 1 year ago. Yes. And his son is working now in a center in Germany.
Yeah, I know. And actually, he trained for Panetsky, this son, but he was looking on his watch, seeing to give us another few minutes, waiting, because there were only 3 people in the room, and there were 3 lecturers. The third is actually Leonard Malis, who was sitting there. And you see, if you look very well, you see this is the carousel with the slides. We still had the slides. And we had the VHS videotapes, not nice PowerPoint like nowadays. This was, there was sometimes a little bit frustrating that the endoscopy was, this was always at the last session of the Congress, somewhere at 5 p.m., the last one. And then he said, give it a few minutes more, but it didn't. Not more people showed up, so we never left. We just gave our lectures. Well, this is only part of the picture because there were much more of them. Yeah, this is in at Tiruvananthapuram, at the Sri Chitra Tirunal Center, and that was I know that I did. I performed some live surgery. And you see all these, the residents, they were extremely willing to learn. And a few of them actually also came over. So they spend a time with it. Because on the picture, I miss Dr. Eshwar, who came to Nijmegen later on. So this is, but now I see it, yeah, with Chris Loftus. Oh yeah, well, that's an honorable moment. There's an, let's see, 2017 this was for the development of endoscopy. They gave this lifetime recognition award. This is, of course, a great honor. But you see, initially, I was expelled from the Netherlands Society because they think in the 1990 was experimenting with patients by doing endoscopy, and now it is well. And of course, he said it is ridiculous. You can't put an endoscope into the brain. That's so. This was this was the end. So after 30 years, they recognized that it was a kind of good part of it. Gee, you have, this was, I gave my valedictory lecture, and at the end of it, the mayor of my hometown came to tell me that the king had knighted me. And the ceremony of becoming a knight is always on the king's birthday, but this was in October, so this was already that I received that honor of that's wow, it's incredible to probably it's all in the internet. This part, I think I see myself there. This must have been during the course. If I see that, I think during the course in Malaysia. I mean, this is one of the things that I want to tell. If you do a new technique, it's not enough doing it just yourself or in a small group. It's only useful if it is useful for the whole population, for everyone, and especially I went to Africa and to India and to other parts of Asia, because when it works there, it is also good. It is not a good technique when only 5 freaks are doing it. It should be a good part for all of neurosurgery, and especially for some parts of hydrocephalus, it is useful. And it's not for everything. It is we had to learn that, but we did a lot of courses, and that was very pleasant. It's incredible to see. I think we when I was counting it lately, then we had done more than 2,500 people that we had in our courses. That's a nice part. Okay, well, I can see this. Oh, this was in with Carlos Cagliari, the first workshop in Latin America. That was in La Plata near Buenos Aires. But you see already the number of participants is reasonable. Yeah. Wow, you have a lot of pictures. This is the one in Buffalo. Yeah, I see Alan Cohen and Martin Betak. I recognize my good friend Walter Grant, who passed away recently. This is actually the one in Malaysia, because I see Asmi Alias and Chandrasekhar and Denny Prefidel. Yeah, that was, yeah. Well, these are nice memories, Nasser, I have to say.
Yes.
Well, you know,
What does this explain, please, Andrei?
This is what I usually also do for the residents, and that's one of my hobbies is cooking. I actually did some master classes with Michelin star chefs, and every year with the staff, but also with the residents, we went for cooking classes. So this is that we well, it's I have to say that it's very relaxing, because when you start cooking, your mind is empty. You don't think about anything else.
This is the last photo, Andrei. This is the last photo. Shall I remove it or leave it?
No. Listen, this is part of that other picture, and of course we had to cook, so you have to do that. And that's and there was one nice part. I remember that because sometimes I with those master classes I worked in the restaurant, just in the kitchen. And once I invited the residents to come for dinner, but they waited for me, but I didn't show up. And they were served already dinner. They were a little bit frustrated that I didn't show up, but they didn't realize that I actually cooked the dinner for them. So at the end of it, I came to ask if everything was fine with this. And they didn't realize, but of course they knew afterwards that they knew that was one of my hobbies.
Very, very interesting photos, actually. And we still have 3 questions, but I think, I don't know if Basant can give us 5 more minutes. Basant, are you here?
I'm there. Go ahead.
Okay. We speak about the present. What's your opinion about the current residency programs and current generations of neurosurgery?
No, I think that's, I absolutely follow the line that Andrew was telling about this. I don't believe that current residents are less motivated, not at all. I see extremely motivated residents. And when I talk to them and they say, oh, you did much more longer working hours, but that's not the point. It's not about how many hours you spend in the hospital. It is about what you do during the hours you are spending in the hospital. So you have to adapt the current training program to the requirements. And that's not an easy task. I mean, we have to, the specialty is growing fast, and it is very difficult to, if you do, there are now already many neurosurgeons doing only spine and not doing any cranial neurosurgery, and vice versa. So that's already difficult. So they have to choose early on to subspecialize. I think that I was the last generation of doing really everything. So that would be, let's say, from a carpal tunnel syndrome, which I thought that would be Andrew's favorite surgery, but didn't turn out to be. No, but it's very, very grateful. I mean, carpal tunnel syndrome and chronic subdural hematomas are extremely successful surgeries. I mean, the patients are extremely happy with the results of that. So that's finally the ENS. Well, the ENS is,
now we have a political question. What's your opinion about these organizations?
Well, the ENS is, of course, something that I have been the president of. I'm involved in ENS for very long. And I'm in debt actually to the ENS because I participated in the training courses that they already organized from the 70s on. So in part of the 80s, that was already, I met there, for example, Vladimir Benesh, Panayotis Saviridis, so some people who are still my friends nowadays. So you meet with let's say 150, 200 other residents from all European countries. And then once a year for a whole cycle of 4 years. And then you become friends for the rest of your life. And then I also entered into the organizational part of it, and then was in the committee chair, and then I became secretary, then I was president-elect and president, and I'm now in the president of the foundation of the ENS. So the ENS, I think, has really shown wonderful growth, because initially it was a smaller club and not comparable for example to ENS. I think it has really matured for a great deal. And the World Federation, as I said, this every 4 years there was a World Congress, and that was what for us the WFNS represented. It was about the World Congress. And so I had it in 1981 in Munich, 1985 in Toronto, 1989 in New Delhi, 1993 in Acapulco, 1997 in Amsterdam, that I participated in that. 2001, it was in Australia. Started September 11.
Let us now speak about the future. I know, speaking about Andrei Groten House, it doesn't need hours, maybe days, but we are limited to 30 minutes. Yes. And so we still have 2 questions. How can you see the future of neurosurgery?
This is actually also, I mean, this is also repetition of what Andrew was saying. The real challenge for neurosurgery is to make it possible in a global perspective to deliver this service to everyone who needs it. I mean, that is absolutely what we have to do. I don't think that only neurosurgeons who fly in for a couple of days, do a couple of surgeries, and then fly back again, that is a valid model to promote. I think we should have strategic alliances between countries and between centers to really, we have to teach them at the place where they will practice. I remember I trained the chief of neurosurgery from Sudan, and but when he went back, he had to deal with a lot of trauma and infections simply in cases that he never saw in our department. Not the huge kind of tumors that he saw, not the big kind of even warm infections, and you name it. So we didn't prepare him well enough for the challenges that he saw when he was back in Khartoum. So you should be able of that. I actually have to say that I learned a lot of being there, and I have seen cases that that helped me dealing with other cases at home again. So it's from both sides, but it should not be just flying in, do a little bit and then flying out again. That for me, that is not a valid thing to do anymore. And as you say, this is something we should. And I know there are much more projects now ongoing to promote neurosurgery in the low and middle income countries, and that's amazing. But we should help them building it up there. That's important.
Andrei, I have an important question. Now we can see that other specialties are taking part of our operations, like the otolaryngology. They are doing transsphenoid operations, orthopedics doing spine operation, radiologists, now the gamma knife is taking many of our patients in oncology. Radiologists, they are doing endovascular, and we have generation, and many of them, they don't know how to clip an aneurysm because they send the patient for endovascular treatment. What do you think about that? These are the frontiers of neurosurgery. Shall we protect it, or we open collaboration with other specialties for the benefit of our patients?
I have seen, and throughout my career, that collaboration is the way to become better from both sides. So I early on had a, let's say, group for complex spine, and that exists from neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons. And actually part of it was even a rehabilitation doctor, there was a psychologist, it was a whole team dealing with complex spine cases. The same in pediatrics, in craniofacial surgery. You have these teams, and they become better. And actually, if you say, oh, but they are taking it away from us, then we should show that we're doing it better than them. So I have seen that when I started in the Netherlands in 1987, orthopedic surgeons were doing more spine surgeries than neurosurgery. Now, more than 90% of all spine surgery is done by neurosurgeons. They have not only done it because we are actually brain surgeons that also do a little bit of spine. No, they focused on that, and they really showed that they do it the best. And the same is that in 2003, I sent one of my vascular neurosurgeons who was good in clipping. I sent them a year to Stockholm to learn also endovascular because I was not so happy with the results of the radiologists. And actually now it is in the Netherlands, we see a growing number of hybrids so that they work together. And that's the only way to go on. So cooperation and doing it together. And of course, the radiologists and we even now have a neurologist and joining the endovascular team. They cannot clip an aneurysm, of course not. But there is the neurosurgeon, and they make the decisions together. And actually now, two of the neurosurgeons in my department are doing the endovascular techniques. They do that, but they also can do the open techniques. So I think that should be
final. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for taking 10 more minutes. And this is, we are requesting you to say your final message to the young generations of neurosurgery.
I will try to do it short. I think that if you want to have a career in neurosurgery, I can only say go for it. It's demanding. It's a demanding medical specialty where we cannot say anything different. But it is also extremely rewarding in your whole life. I mean, as neurosurgery, but if you want to be successful, I always advise people, choose a niche where you think you can be good at and what people need, and concentrate on that. You cannot do everything, but choose a niche. That's essential to move on in your career.
Thank you very much, Andrei. It was very interesting, very, very interesting, actually.
Well, thank you, Nasser, for also building this whole
I give the mic back.
With the whole PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. As always, you are great. I give the mic back to Basant Mishra to close this event.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. And there's two great neurosurgeons, 2As actually, 2A plus neurosurgeons, Andrew and Andrei. We choose it that way. And they both are, could I maybe just say passionate about, and you have to love the discipline to be a neurosurgeon, and you have to be obsessive, and you need to excel in a particular field. I would summarize for the giants who advise the young neurosurgeons or the young residents to continue a career in neurosurgery. That's the only way to success. Is no shortcut. There is no way you can leave a step to be successful. Every single time you have to do it all over again and do it all the time. So thank you very much. It's been an honor and privilege to interact with you guys. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Nasser, for interacting with Andrew and Andrei. It's a privilege. As I said, these are all recordings. We will send it to you for your memories. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Basant. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Yeah, good night for you. Bye-bye.